So hey there fellow YouTubers, Frank Bush here again. So in today's video I had the good people over at Litime decided that they were going to send me off their portable battery box to do a review video on. So if you're interested in that kind of content, then stay tuned. So I'll just do a quick unboxing of this. I'll do that all off camera and we'll just pull out all the stuff that's in this box. Normally Litime has really good quality shipping of their stuff, so but yeah, I'll just pull all this stuff out and we'll start to look at it in detail, yeah? Alright, well that was pretty elementary. It seems pretty straightforward. There was just this sitting in the box. So I'll peel off the plastic. They've got like a protective plastic film on it. So I'll just peel that all off and then we'll start to look at the nitty-gritty of what this thing has to offer, yeah? Alright, well, peeled off all that pesky plastic and popped the little locks on the side just so I can easily open this up, yeah? And I'll walk through all the different kind of outputs and that kind of thing as we go through the video, yeah? But we'll just look at the inside of... Seems pretty straightforward. Get a positive and negative that hook off to the batteries. And then Litime's really good when it comes to sending off things like stickers and that kind of stuff that they just include with their kit, yeah? And then they've got a manual that's in the box as well. And it comes with some, looks like little screws and bolts and that kind of happiness. I'll look at the details of that, but we'll go through the product manual just quickly. I'm not going to read through all the details. It's fairly straightforward when it comes to battery boxes, but I'm going to show you the quality of things. Of all the papers, you know, good high gloss paper and all that kind of happiness, right? And when it comes to the dimensions of this box, it's 12.5 inches high, so 320 millimeters. And it's got a depth of 7.48 inches, so 190 millimeters. And then width of 9.84 inches, so 250 millimeters. And the cap is about 4.6 inches tall, so 117 millimeters in height, if you will. And then the overall master width will be 16 inches, 0.54, and then so 420 millimeters. And then the base width is 13.39 inches, so 340 millimeters. It's all fairly standard stuff when it comes to kind of box sizes. I'll pull off a couple different Litime batteries that I have as well, and I'll throw them into this box so you guys can get an idea how much empty space there is in the box versus the different types of batteries I install and that kind of thing, yeah? And we got one more thing here. So we got some orange straps. I imagine this is to keep the lid strapped on to ensure that, you know, everything stays kind of as one single unit. So that's all right, you know, fairly simple. I'll pull this up and kind of show the innards of the inside here. Fairly straightforward. It's got a nice little circuit where you've got some cigarette lighter adapter outputs and the USB outputs and that kind of stuff. Like I say, I'll go through that in all detail, right? And then it's got a little circuit breaker on here. I believe it's at 16 amps to make sure that, you know, you're not drawn through these lines. But the wire gauge looks like it's about 10, maybe 12 gauge. So it's a good thick wire. It looks like it can handle the amps and all that kind of stuff. All the connections seemed pretty solid. They're all on there. You know, so it looks like the build quality is pretty sufficient in that regards. And like I say, I'll switch over now and start to show you the outputs on the outside, and you can get an idea of kind of the functionality that this thing does for an output, yeah? Okay, so at this point in time, I'll start just kind of walking through the specs of the unit, if you will. I've already kind of covered the out dimensions, and I'll touch lightly on that again. But for the DC outputs, you've got a QC 3.0, which gives a 5 volt at 3 amp or a 9 volt at 2 amp, a 12 volt at 1.5 amp. There's one of those. And then there's a type C output with a 5 volt, and it's got a 5.6 amp max. And it can do a 9 volt at 3 amp. And then there's one output of those. And then there's 12 volt, 15 amp cigarette sockets, and there's 2 of those. So there's a voltmeter on the top as well, and it goes from 4 volt up to 30. But normally these batteries, you know, they're sitting anywhere from say 11.5 up to about 14.4 in that range, right? But the circuit breaker has a switch built into it right here, where you've got a 16 amp max. So the maximum continuous input and output current is 100 amps when it comes to being able to charge this battery up and that kind of thing, yeah? And the terminals on the battery box are M8 terminals for, the people that are curious. And then when it comes to the dimensions, like I said, talked about kind of the outside of the box and the size of it. It was 16.5 by 9.8 by 12.6 inches. Give you an idea of the size. And really, this box is compatible with Group 24, 27, and 31 type batteries. And then when it comes to the material that this bad boy is made out of, it's a PC, PBT plastic, if you will, and it weighs, within reason about 3 pounds, 3.04 pounds, to give you an idea kind of the size and the scope of this animal. So now that I've touched on all the little techie bits, now we'll just start to shift and look of, I'll come in close and I'll show you an up close of this, and I'll show you an up close of the outputs, of the DC outputs, yeah? All right, we'll give you a little bit of an up close here and show you kind of the functional bits when it comes to the outputs and that kind of stuff, yeah? So you've got a negative sitting over here and a positive here. Now that connects up to the 6-gauge silicone wire that they have that hooks right onto the battery, so you can hook on larger devices and that kind of stuff, and inverters and all that kind of stuff, or hook on MPPT charge controllers and all that, right? But yeah, you've got your voltmeter sits right on the top, so it's going to be easy to see, and then it's got a reset on off button right here, easily available. And then I'll just pan to the side and pop this open. This is a dual USB port where it's got QC3 and the USB-C that I was talking about the specs earlier. And now when it comes to, they give us 2 cigarette lighter adapter outputs. So it's just the same as you'd see in your car, where you've got the 12 volt plugs that you can plug in any 12 volt device, yeah? And when it comes to the amount of currents that can run through this, it has that 16 amp limit. And I'll just flip this over and show you on the insides now of this wiring that they've hooked together. They've done it in series. So that's the one limitation I can see, is if I wanted to cook using 12 volt cooking utensils, or pots and pans and that kind of stuff, I'm only going to be able to plug one of those in at a time into this unit, even though it's got the 2 cigarette lighter adapter units, just because the amperage that's needed normally for those are about 12-13 amps each. And when it comes to just how they've wired this, it's all been connected in series instead of parallel. So the combined amount of power you're going to be able to draw is 16 amps from all 3 or 4 of these outputs, if you will, depending on how you want to look at that, at one time, yeah? So what I'll do is I'll go grab a couple different batteries that I have and kind of show you some of the variants of the batteries that can go into this box as well, yes? Okay, so if you've watched previous videos of mine, you'll know that I've worked with Litime over the last, I don't know, a couple of years, I think it's been now, and they've sent me off multiple batteries. So in what the examples I'm going to show you compatible to this box today, I've got the Bluetooth smart battery for the Group 24 here. I've got the Litime mini 100 ampere hour. These are all 100 ampere hour batteries, yeah? And then I've got the Litime trolling motor battery, and they all have subtle variants when it comes to their sizes and functionalities that they're ideally being used for and that kind of stuff. And like I said, I've done detailed videos on each one of these batteries previously, so if you're interested in one of those batteries specifically, like I say, there's content on the channel. Just go back a few videos and you'll find them, yeah? But what I'll do is I'll shift my camera angles and I'll show you that each one of these different types of batteries are all compatible with this battery box, yeah? So now I know the camera angles get funky, but I'll just pop the lid off here and set the lid. In fact, I'll just set it up on the box itself. And I'll start with the smallest one, which is the mini. And you can see here, there's ample room in here when it comes to you know, using the smaller batteries. I even would turn around and probably put some styrofoam or something in along the sides just to kind of stabilize the smaller batteries into there, you know, just to ensure that there isn't any kind of moving around and that kind of stuff. But you can see that the mini goes in there. I'll just drop the little handle and I'm gonna just slide the lid back on. You can see the mini goes in there, no problems, no issues at all. I'll pop that mini out. I'll put in the smart Bluetooth one now. Same kind of thing. Like I say, these are all subtly variant in size, right? And kind of set that on, no problems. And now the largest of the three, which I wasn't too sure if this one would even fit or not, but the trolling motor. And in fact, the trolling motor just fits ideally in here, really. There's very, very little space around the box that would kind of cause it to jostle as you were moving it around and that kind of thing, right? But yeah, that would always be my recommendation, is just put a little bit of styrofoam or something in around the sides just to really make sure you stabilize that battery inside the box, if you will, so it's not just kind of freely floating around, yeah? But you can see, easily use a variety of different batteries within this box. It's compatible to a fairly wide range. I'm not 100%, but I do believe there's another version of this battery box for different sizes of batteries as well, but potentially that's a topic for a different video, yeah? But one way or the other, let's start to hook up this battery box now. I'll just use the trolling motor battery that I have sitting in here, and we'll just start to wire it into that, and let's start to light this up and use it, yeah? So now this is a really elementary process. So I've just got the lid I left sitting on top of the cardboard box that it came in, right? And you simply just take the black line that comes off that lid, and then I've got the red line that comes off the lid, and I connect the black to the black and the red to the red. You know, easy peasy lemon squeezy. It doesn't get much better than that, right? So, and the nice part is they're using kind of a softer wire here. So even though it can handle the 100 amps, it's nice in the regards where it's kind of an easily, you know, flexible wire in that regard. I've worked with wires with similar diameter that are a lot firmer, and it makes it difficult when you want to kind of press them into the box. You don't want to kind of bend wires hard or any of that business, right? But yeah, you simply just connect to your negative and to your positive. So, you know, black to black, red to red, that kind of stuff. Elementary. And now, when it comes to all of this stuff, you know, if I was connecting onto an inverter, I'd put a resistor on, and I've shown that in previous videos. But because we're purely into a 12-volt environment here, I'm not concerned about, you know, voltage jumps and sparks or any of that business. So I can skip that step and just literally connect straight onto these battery terminals. But it's always a good practice now when you're working with batteries to make sure that your terminal connections are on good and tight. I mean, you don't want to crank them to the point that you're stripping them or any of that business, but you definitely want to have it where that connection is solid. And it's, you know, it's not going anywhere, you know, and there shouldn't be any wiggle or any of that business when you're doing it, right? When you've got high levels of current flowing through lines, you know, if loose connections can cause problems, right? So hopefully, you know, that's fairly straightforward. But, you know, and you don't want to damage the gear that you get, right? And as you can see, all I'm using is just a basic screwdriver. And it's as simple as that. This unit's hooked up now. I just want to make sure I kind of fold in those lines. Now on the sides of the box, there's little kind of handles that clip down and that kind of stuff. So once you get the box fully on, you just kind of clip them in place and they lock. I'll do the same on the other side. I'll show you up close to those little clipping mechanisms. And that's it. We're pretty well off to the races. As you can see, sitting at 12.8 volts. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. But yeah, it's just that easy. We're ready to use this out in the field, yeah? So like I say, let me just kind of tighten down the little latch on the side and we'll carry on with the next part of the video, yeah? And I'll just show you that little latching mechanism on the side. So once the lid's on good, you just kind of pop that on. And it just hooks on right onto where there's a little handle grab that I can hold on the sides if I wanted to pick this up and move it around, yeah? I mean, obviously there's the handle on the top that I can tote this with, but as you can see, all the functional wiring is pretty well done at this point in time, and this is ready to be used in the field. That's one of the things I really like about these types of setups, is the simplicity of, you know, working with them, yeah? And you can see there's a good robust handle that sits on the top here, and that's the part where you just pick it up and go, right? Easy peasy. So let's hook up some devices to this and kind of show you the functionality and start talking about why I like using just these battery boxes, especially when I go out into the field and I'm off grid, compared to using, say, a little solar generator and that kind of stuff, yeah? And I'll kind of walk through the pros and cons of those things, yeah? Okay, so let's just get this bad boy turned on and start using it, yeah? So you simply have the on-off button that sits up here, you know, and the circuit breaker flips. You just reset it by pressing and holding that down, yeah? And like I say, you can see your voltage sitting there. And what I'm going to do for the first example, I've just got my phone here. Now I'm going to plug in to the USB-C, because that's normally the highest power draw, yeah? And I'm just going to plug into that and see if we're getting fast charging happening. And I can see right here, fast charging. So that tells me that I'm putting out the amps that I can start to charge devices and that kind of stuff easy enough when I'm out in the field. And like I say, they've got the normal standard USB, which is a quick charge 3.0. So even if you didn't have the USB-C and you're wanting to do rapid charging and stuff, this device would be able to handle that with ease. And what I'll do is I'll just go grab another cable and I'll plug in my tablet as well, yeah? Okay, so I just went and grabbed my tablet here, and I'm just plugging this USB into the QC3 port. And like I say, that's just standard USB plug-in stuff, right? Nothing fancy at all, but it's a USB-C output. And I can see I'm charging, and it's fast charging. So I'm able to fast charge my tablet at the same time as I'm fast charging my phone. So the USB functionality on here is good for if I'm out in the field and I want to charge my devices up and that kind of stuff. It's really easy. I just make sure I got to have my cables to plug things in, right? And now we'll turn around and I can see the voltage dropped a little bit because it's carrying the load, right? And that's okay. These lithium iron phosphate batteries, as I've shown in previous videos, you can run things up to like the size of microwaves and stuff, right? I've deep fried in my backyard and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm not worried about the power or capacity of the batteries or any of that business. That's all been well established with me, right? So, but I'll go grab a few other devices and kind of show you how, even without having inverters and everything else when I'm out in the field, how I can achieve kind of high level functionality of being able to cook food and power my devices and run lights and all that kind of stuff with ease, yeah? All right, well, kind of improving this as I go. So I'm going to have a little bit of a change of plans. If I'm getting hungry, I just want to get my lunch going, right? And I want to make sure that this can work to cook food and everything when I'm out in the field. So this little unit here, these are little 12 volt. It's got a cigarette lighter adapter. It's got a built-in fuse and stuff onto it, right? So pretty elementary, but it's like a little mini oven. And it gets up to about 150 degrees Celsius. So 300, 325, I don't know, I'm ballparking, Fahrenheit, but it's easily enough to cook food, yeah? So I'm just going to turn around and I've got some frozen chicken stir fry here. And I'm not trying to promote brands or anything. And normally I have a little tray that I throw in here, but I'm just being lazy and it is what it is that way. So I'm just going to toss in all my food in here I can make myself some lunch. So what I'll do is, and it's as simple as I just close the lid on that. And really anything you toss in there will just cook over time, right? And I'm just going to plug this in to my cigarette lighter adapter now. And it's as simple as that. I'm ready to go and it's cooking food. So this will take about an hour and a half or so to give you an idea. And I can see the voltage dropped on here. And if I just kind of feel in on the bottom, I can feel the heat already starting to produce. But one way or the other, I'll just leave that closed. And You can get these at truck shops. They sell them at Walmart and that kind of stuff. You know, the guys that do cross-country trucks, they use these kinds of things all the time to cook food in, you know, because they're mobile and they don't necessarily want to stop at restaurants and wait for an hour or whatever. So they'll just toss their lunch in these and cook them off. Yeah, and I've shown this in previous videos as well when I've done mobile truck camping and all that. But you can see this battery box is able to handle cooking the food while I'm still charging my tablet and my phone. That's all happening at the same time, yeah? And then I'll turn around. I've got this electric shaver, and I've shown this in examples. And what I'll do now is they also have these little inverters you can buy. You know, I'm in Canada, so I get these at Canadian Tire, but they just convert a cigarette lighter adapter out to wall power, and it also gives me USB. And I've got a couple different ones of these that I use all the time. But what I'm going to do is just switch the lunch down onto the lower one and just let that kind of carry on. Then I'll keep an eye on it to make sure. With my other cooker, a little light comes on so I could show you the light, but with this one there just isn't a light, so there's nothing I can show you in that regard. But I'm going to take this little cigarette lighter adapter to AC inverter that I have, and this can handle up to 75 watts, so it's enough to run like small light bulbs, shavers and that kind of stuff. And that's normally typically what I'll show in my examples, but it's as simple as I just turn around and plug that in to the other cigarette lighter adapter, yeah? And now I'll plug in my shaver, and my shaver's able to go, right? It's just that simple. So I can turn around when I'm in a camp now and have all this stuff going. Oh, see, that was enough to trip it, yeah? I pushed it past the limit, having all those devices going, and we tripped it. That's exactly what I wanted to see. We're pushing it right up to the threshold, yeah? So I'm successfully able to turn around and let's charge my two devices and cook my lunch at the same time without tripping that breaker. But as soon as I start plugging in other devices into this cigarette lighter adapter, because this thing is pulling like 13 amps or so just by itself, it draws a half decent amount of power, yeah? And I'll just pop it open and make sure I can feel it's hot on the base already. But yeah, this thing uses about 13 amps worth of power, so it's consuming the majority of it. But it shows, you know, without question that this was all hooked in series, because as soon as we plugged in the shaver and we pushed it above that 16 amps, the safety of the circuit breaker kicked on, and it's good. We didn't blow a fuse or anything. The circuit breaker just kicks on and saves us, right? So it'd be easy enough to turn around and say, okay, well, rather than run my shaver, let's push it right up to its limit. So I've got a light sitting on the tripod that's helping for the lighting of filming this video, but I'll just pop that off and we'll plug that into the USB to kind of lower the threshold so we're not running right up to the edge, and show you that you have the ability to cook off a single meal, to run some lights, and to be able to charge a device all at the same time, yeah? So I'll just grab my little light here, and I'll just unplug my tablet, because my phone's the one that actually needs more of a charge than the tablet does at this point, but that's a side issue. I'll just set my tablet aside and plug in a little USB light that I have. And it's just, you know, standard USB stuff, right? But if you're off grid, this kind of stuff is ideal, where I've got a loose wire in this connection, but you can see hopefully that now I'm able to run simple lighting systems while I'm cooking and charging a single device. And I didn't have to drag out inverters and all that other stuff out into the field. You know, in previous videos I've done, I've shown where I'm able to cook full meals and run stove elements and all that kind of stuff, right? But that stuff uses a lot of power. So I'll shift camera angles and I'll kind of talk about why I really like these battery boxes, and quite often I want to use them out in the field rather than use like a solar generator or something along that lines, yeah? So just give me 2 seconds, kind of reposition things, and I'll start to chat about those in detail. Okay, kind of reorganize things a little. I'll just show you this little unit. So this is a little USB hub. So it doesn't produce high-speed power like the fast charging and stuff that I necessarily get off of these DC outputs off this battle box. But what it allows me to do is easily, I'll just unplug this light and plug in this little hub instead. And now if I know that I'm going to be running a lot of low powered devices, I can turn around and plug in, because these lights use barely anything, right? I can turn around and plug in my light, but now I've still got more USB outs, so I'm not limited by just the one that the box has available. And it's easy enough for me. Sorry, there's a loose wire on that light. I'm going to try to plug in this tablet now, and this is all while I'm cooking. So this battle box now, this battery box, it's turning around and charging my tablet, it's running this light, it's cooking my food, it's charging my cell phone, and it's doing it all at the same time. But it's using small amounts of power, and this is where I'll kind of shift the conversation a bit, and why I really like using these types of things. Like I said, this loose wire on this light I've had this light forever, and the wire's just starting to give. But one of the reasons why I really enjoy using these types of setups over, say, solar generators is purely because of the capacity that I'm able to carry. You know, a solar generator can be roughly about the size of this for a half decent one. And I've shown ones out in previous videos, and they're great products. But what I find is if I'm wanting to cook with them, like I'm cooking right now, I'm only able to cook for, say, an hour, maybe 2 hours, where I'm just plugging in, you know, induction stovetop elements and that kind of stuff, or I've got an electric grill that I use. At best, I'm able to get about an hour's use out of using that kind of technology where I'm cooking with AC power. And I've talked in detail in previous videos about cooking with 12 volt and how much more efficient it is, that we don't necessarily need to go off to wall power and AC power to be able to successfully cook off meals and that kind of thing. To give you an idea, to run this little unit here, just off of this battery box, I could probably cook in this for 8 to 10 hours. So if I'm out over a weekend and I'm off running around in the field, I can throw my lunch into this box, come back in an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is. And I know that I've still got lots of battery capacity after this meal has been fully cooked. And to me, that side of things is important. When you're out in an off-grid environment, you know, it's not just the amount of power you're producing, but it's the amount of power you're consuming. And you want to have the footprint of that all be as low as possible. In this kind of construct, I can bring along a single 200 watt solar panel, and I've shown out examples of those in previous videos, where I can simply wire them up to these terminals using like an MPPT solar charge controller. And I'll probably show that in one of my next videos of hooking up these boxes to run with solar panels, charging them when you're out in the field and that kind of stuff. But like I say, I'll save that for a future video. But one of the real gains in my mind is the reality of I can cook off multiple meals off a single charge of that battery. And for a 200 watt solar panel, if I'm getting full sun, I could charge this battery up from dead to full in, say, 6 to 8 hours, you know, a good full day of sun. So it gives me a bit of depth when it comes to cooking and other things. And I've also shown in previous videos hybrid solar cookers that use heating elements that are 12 volt based as well. I can easily use them with this kind of construct. Then they have vacuum sealed walls where if I cook the food, even if the battery ran out of power and that kind of thing, that food will stay hot in that vacuum sealed, or, you know, vacuum sealed tube for hours and hours and hours. So as soon as the food gets cooked and comes up to temperature, it can sit in that, you know, for 8-10 hours before it's going to lose the temperature back out of it. That can be really invaluable when you're out in the field. You know, like I say, when it comes to wanting to be able to have it that, you know, say during intermittent weather, I'm still able to cook off a meal. This kind of setup allows me to do that with a very small footprint. not much more than just adding in a solar charge controller and a solar panel, and I'm able to take this size of a setup out into the field and cook for, you know, potentially 2-3 days, you know, where there's really bad weather, without having to worry about recharging my battery up, because there's a larger capacity in the battery itself. You know, this battery holds about 1,280 watt hours worth of power, you know, so in its full capacity, where say a solar generator that's this size, because it's got the inverters and everything else built into it, they make the batteries in them smaller, because the inverters and all that other stuff take up space within the box. Yeah, so by ditching the kind of higher AC output, it allows me to have larger battery capacity. And so I do really kind of prefer using battery boxes and stuff when I'm out in the field. You know, don't get me wrong, if you're off grid and you're in a cabin, you're going to want to have solar generators, and you can conveyance all that stuff in with ease and all that, the more the merrier. But with this type of stuff, I could easily, you know, do say 1 or 2 trips and pack this in, you know, in a backpack, and or carry it in my hand and pack in the components in a backpack with me. So there's this level of, you know, foot powered conveyance that I can do with these types of setups that become difficult with large solar generators that start to really weigh a lot. You know, if you wanted to have the level of capacity in this, typically the solar generators that they have, that marry up and have batteries that would be that size, you're looking at like 2,000 watt output of the AC output that comes off them and stuff. But those units get up to 70, 80, 90, 100 pounds, right? So to move that around and to start to tote that through the bush, if you're going off grid, can become a difficult task. Whereas something like this is closer to, say, 35, 40, 45 pounds, depending on the battery you use and that kind of variance, you know, so it makes it far lighter and easier to kind of be portable with these types of setups. And you can see, like I say, we haven't tripped it now, where the shaver really was just using too much power. But I'm successfully able to run a basic lighting system, you know, of an LED. And when you're in a camp, say in a tent, or you're in some off-grid shelter, having at least a single light running is always ideal. And to give you an idea, for if I was just using this as a lighting system now, I just wanted to have lights going, I've done examples in previous videos where you can run a little LED light like this. It's like a 3-watt light bulb. You know, you can run this for literally hundreds of hours before it's going to even draw this battery down. So if you're just using this for a lighting system, you know, you've got a robust option where even if you had a week of really bad weather and there was no power coming off your solar panels at all, you're still going to have a basic lighting system. But like I say, when stepping out to the 12-volt systems like this allows me to cook without having to carry all the extra weight and power consumption and everything else of the inverters. And so if you do want to kind of know details about how much more efficient it is to really cook with 12-volt systems, you know, it's a little slower. I'm not going to lie, it's not going to cook as fast, but the power savings you get in the long run when you're off grid is invaluable. So I'll stop, I'll shift camera angles, and I'll give this a bit of time. I'm going to go and stir this a bit, and I'm going to let this run long enough. You know, I'll keep everything running of my devices charging, my phones, the cooking, the lights. I'll let all of that run and just stir up my lunch, and I'll show you that it has the capacity to fully be able to cook this off and stuff as we go. And that the battery voltage doesn't even drop down to 12 volt yet. You know, because you're running this lithium iron phosphate, it normally sits at a slightly higher voltage, but the longevity of the batteries and everything, I mean, Litime makes great products, yeah? And the longevity of these products, you could use this every day from dead to full for the next 10 years without issue. You know, they're solid products in that regard. And I just like having it where they have these DC components. I still have the battery terminals that are right here. I can easily strap on just as I would, you know, just as I would if I was hooking onto the battery terminal inside the box, right? I can still hook on to right here and achieve all the same functionality. So, you know, with the 3-pound weight of this box added to the battery, the level of functionality that this gives me now allows me to have to, you know, replace having to carry inverters and all that stuff. Even a small 600 watt inverter, say, enough to run my induction stove on low power. That inverter weighs 5 pounds, right? You know, it's one of those things of it has weight to it and it has volume to it, right? But like I say, I'll stop ranting. I'm really just eager to get my lunch under the go. So I'll leave all of this stuff fully functioning and running, and, you know, I won't unplug anything or any of that business. I know the battery capacity can easily handle that. And I'll stir this and I'll show you when this is fully cooked off. Okay, well, let's do the first little sneak peek. It's been about 20 minutes or so. I know I was rambling for a bit, but it's been about 20 minutes or so since we first put that in. You can hear the sizzling. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. Just give it a bit of stir so it doesn't stick to the bottom. And like I say, it's still going to take a bit of time. I've cooked with this lots in the past, but one way or the other, I'll just put the lid back on. And the microwave just beeps, so my coffee's ready off camera. And I'll just let this keep cooking a little further, yeah? Okay, and one little side detail. I just didn't feel like, it's only been 2 minutes since I last opened it. I didn't feel like there was enough chicken in there, so, you know, I'm going to throw in some more chicken. Just had some frozen stuff that's already in strips and stuff sitting in the... So that'll stretch out my cook time, but like I say, I'm not worried. Maybe one or two more, and might even throw some sauce in there a minute, but yeah, it just looked like it was a little on the thin side, and I'm feeling a little hungry, so even if that adds 20 minutes, half an hour to the cook time, I'm okay with all that. And like I say, I'll cut it out of the camera. You guys will just see the end product, but I'm just hungrier than I first thought. As the day goes on, I'm just getting famished, and I might even add in some sauces and stuff into there, but no, I'll cut back when it's a little further. Alright, well, and I keep changing my mind. I felt like the sauces just were, it looked like it was pretty bland. So I added in some soy sauce and just a few other things. And, yeah, like I say, give it a stir. Let the goodness happen, yeah? And that way you guys didn't see it, you know, white one scene and all of a sudden it's brown the next, so you know what's going on. But that's it. I'll just close the lid. Realistically, I give that about an hour, hour and a half or so. So I'm not in a big rush. And then I'll be able to have my lunch, yeah? Okay, I almost forgot. I was getting hungry, and like I say, I've got my lunch just kind of cooking off to the side here. I'm going to go hook on this orange strap just for safety's sake. Then that's just going to see there's a little groove here where they've thought of everything, really. There's this little groove here where the straps will sit right into that. So this just wraps around the battery box, then straps in. I'm going to go off and do that while this meal's cooking. I'll just move this off to the side. Yeah, I gotta figure out where I gotta free up a hand here, so I'm gonna pause this. I'm just gonna go hook on this little orange strap and get that, and then I'll flip back and show you that it's kind of connected on. I just want to have it where if I do pick this thing up, the little side clips don't break or any of that business, right? So let me go off and strap that on and I'll show it to you. So, and as you can see, I'm just strapped on that buckle. And I just put the actual little buckle bit right up in where the handle is. There's enough room for that. And then I tucked in the, you know, flap, if you will, that comes off of these things to the inside. And that way everything's kind of locked in place. But it gives a nice kind of, you know, clean look of, I mean, it's a buckle and a strap, right? But either way, one way or the other, this is kind of more secured now. So I'm not worried about the handle separating, you know, from the main bucket holding the battery and all that kind of stuff. But it's time to flip cameras and go stir this meal again, see how close we're getting. It's been about another 15 minutes or so. So hopefully you're hearing that on the camera. I'm seeing bubbles and stuff. We're at the point where this is kind of simmering along, yeah? And you can see it's starting to kind of stick to the bottom a little bit because of that temperature. I should be stirring a little more often than I am, but such is life. And to be clear, this was all from frozen, right? So it takes that extra, takes the extra energy, didn't mean to bump the camera there, to kind of thaw it all out first before it starts to go through its actual cooking and all that, but and it's pretty warm. And yeah, well, that's it for another 20 minutes or so. Like I say, I might stir it off camera a little more often, but either way, it's just cooked away. Okay, so about an hour's passed now since I first put this food in. And as you can see, hopefully you're seeing that, lots of bubbling and stuff going on in here. So I see this is cooked. The chicken was all pre-cooked to begin with, so I'm not worried about that. But it all looks piping hot. See lots of steam coming off it and all that happiness. So, you know, when it comes to... Yeah, it's hot. Oh, man. Tasty, too. So I'll just close that lid and keep the heat in. But now all I'm going to do is just unplug this battery box where I had my cooker plugged in. And it's just that simple now. I'm detached. My cooker's no longer taking the power, yeah. And the battery box held out swimmingly. So like I say, one of the big things I really like about using these battery boxes is the reality that I can get a lot of depth of charge. Here, I'll move this light a bit. Just shift it over to the other bit. Like I say, I never turned any of this stuff off the entire time. And realistically, to cook that meal and charge my devices and stuff, I'm lucky if I used about 1/10 of the power that is available within this battery box. You know, so if you're thinking about, you're wanting to do off-grid stuff, but you don't want to get complicated, you don't want to have to wire up your own stuff or any of that business, you know, think about getting the litime battery box. It seems to be a great little unit. I like the quality. The build quality seems really nice on it. I have no issues in that regard. I think the only hiccup I have in this whole setup is the fact that they do the 16 amps running in series. That was the only limiting factor I saw in this entire equation, where I would like to have it where I could plug in two, because like I said, I was only using the one cigarette lighter. I'd like to have it where I could run both of these cigarette lighter adapters and be able to push up to about 15 amps off each one of those independently. That to me, I know it's a big ask, right? Most of the devices that you get, even in solar generators, they only go up to a 10 amp threshold and then they cut off, and there's all sorts of stuff that goes on in that regard. But to me, because of things like these little road cooking ovens, and I've got saucepans and frying pans and this little oven, I've got tons of cooking gear that's all cigarette lighter adapter. I've got my solar stuff. Almost all of them use about 12-13 amps, you know, so I'd like to just see it where instead of this being wired in series, that it was wired in parallel, and then potentially instead of being the 16, just push it up to like 25 or 30 to give me the ability to run 12-13 amps off each one of these, and then I'm going to pull a couple amps off here for my USB charging. But you know, I mean, how often do I need to turn around and be shaving at the same time as I'm cooking dinner when I'm out in the woods, right? It's not normally a common thing. The functionality of this battery box to me is already high functioning. Like, I'm glad that I own this, and it'll be used out in the field. You know, it just gives waterproofing to a lot of my stuff, right? And I live in a rainforest environment where I want to have electricity when I'm out in the field, but I also want to make sure that, you know, the wet conditions I'm all, you know, often in a rainforest environment. I mean, even today, I would have done the better part of this video outside, but it is just pouring out. You know, I really wanted to just do the unboxing inside and then do all the cooking and all the running of that stuff out, you know, out in the field. But it was just pouring and pouring, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll just do this whole video inside and show, because either way it shows the example. I'm able to run lights and cook food and charge my devices. And you know, when you're camping or you're off grid or you're mobile and that kind of thing, you know, that type of stuff can be invaluable, right? So, you know, if you ask me, this litime battery box is really top shelf. The few modifications I would do to it, and hopefully they'll watch this video and see that, yeah, if you could get up to 15 amps on each one of those cigarette lighter lines independently, other than that, there's not much I would change about this thing. To me, this is top shelf, yeah? So I'll shift camera angles and I'll start to wrap the video up though, yeah? Well, there you have it, fellow YouTubers. So that's my review of the litime battery box. You know, all in all, I think it's a pretty good product. The build quality seems fantastic. The price point is reasonable within, you know, in my mind, within reason, of what you're getting and what they've done, the quality of the wiring job and everything else. None of it looks shoddy. It all looks high quality. You know, everything I've ever received from Litime always has a high quality look to it, and I haven't had any issues with using their products at all. You know, they've been a pleasure to work with, and I trust using their stuff out in the field, to be honest. So, you know, if you enjoy this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching, yeah? Like I say, for the next video, I'll probably show hooking up an MPPT charge controller to this battery box and how simple that stuff is. So, you know, if you wanted to run solar panels and kind of charge this when you're out in the field and that kind of stuff as well, yeah? So, like I say, if you're interested in that kind of content, stay tuned. I've got more coming soon, yeah? Cheers.